Madeline Hudalla, and today I'll be talking about queer Tehrangeles. In 2015, JQ International, the leading queer Jewish organization in Los Angeles, celebrated its inaugural Persian Pride to recognize the stories, resilience, and history of the city's queer Iranian Jewish community. The inception of Persian Pride was driven by the need to serve Los Angeles' remarkably diverse community of over 500,000 Jews. Today, 4%, or approximately 22,500, of Los Angeles Jews identify as Iranian, distinguishing the city as home to the nation's largest Iranian Jewish population. This unique demographic status originated with the dramatic increase of Iranian migration to the United States, and more specifically to Los Angeles, following the 1979 Iranian Revolution. The subsequent wave of Iranian Jewish migrants quickly established roots throughout Los Angeles, a city affectionately referred to as Tehrangeles, whereby the community's commercial area has centered in Westwood, or Persian Square, throughout the following decade. Despite the considerable and expanding literature engaging with Los Angeles' rich Iranian Jewish history, the scholarship remains noticeably heteronormative, and queer Jewish histories of Los Angeles likewise exclude Iranian Jews. This project seeks to bridge these parallel yet segregated historiographies to foreground queer Iranian Jewish narratives. I hope to interrogate this absence and to advocate for the historiographical visibility of queer Iranian Jews through three primary lines of questioning. How were Iranian Jews perceived by Los Angeles' majority Ashkenazi, or European, Jewish community following the post-1979 migratory wave? How did this perception inform the positionality of queer Iranian Jews in mainstream queer Jewish spaces and politics in 1980s Los Angeles? How can historians of Jewish Los Angeles, operating at the intersection of queer and Iranian identity, reconcile with the archival gaps marginalizing queer Iranian Jews? Confronting the historiographical obfuscation of queer Iranian Jewish narratives first necessitates an examination of Iranian Jewish encounters with Los Angeles Ashkenazim. Throughout the following analysis, I purposely adopt the terminology Iranian Jews rather than Persian Jews to recognize the ethnic diversity of Jews originating from Iran. Although the majority of Iranian Jews may identify as ethnically Persian, the diaspora additionally includes Arab, Ashkenazi, and Kurdish Jews. In a 1989 profile of the city's burgeoning Iranian Jewish population titled A New Persian Empire, in the Los Angeles Times examined the population's development and integration, or lack thereof, into Los Angeles' overwhelmingly white Ashkenazi Jewish community. Although the article, published nearly a decade after the Iranian Revolution, passively notes the vibrancy of Iranian Jewish life, it uncritically amplifies the Jewish community's xenophobic apprehensions towards their Iranian co-religionists. The article pays particular attention to the cultural clashes between Iranian and Ashkenazi Jews at Westwood's Sinai Temple. A member of the synagogue's board of directors asserts that there were, quote, ill feelings about the Iranians, and there were always rumors that the Persian community was taking over Sinai Temple, unquote. He continues that, quote, the Persians have a Middle Eastern culture. It is the stereotypical Persian rug salesman and bartering, unquote. He conclusively alleges and expresses his frustration that Iranian Jews frequented services but refrained from paying membership dues. The article couples this focus on Sinai Temple's Iranian congregants with a broader community assessment provided by social workers from Jewish Family Services of Los Angeles. According to the organization's social workers, cultural norms unique to Iranian Jews renders the population predisposed to, quote, child abuse and wife beating, unquote. Although I have chosen to highlight the anti-Iranian politics evident in this article, the Los Angeles Times' alarmist depiction of Iranian Jews epitomizes the Orientalist rhetoric propagated by representatives of Jewish community institutions and Los Angeles media throughout the decade. Ashkenazim explicitly and implicitly distance themselves from the backwards, foreign Iranian Jews to gain proximity to whiteness and Europeanness. Historian Aviva Ben-Ur explains the recurrent intracommunal incongruity between Ashkenazi and non-Ashkenazi Jews, such as Iranian Jews, as a moment of co-ethnic recognition failure and ranked stratification. Co-ethnic recognition failure, which he defines as a person's denial of a fellow group member's common ethnicity due to mistaken identity, emerges alongside the introduction of co-ethnic immigrant populations. Ben-Ur suggests that waves of co-ethnic migration challenge dominant or established conceptualizations of ethnicity and consequently incite rank stratification. Although she cites Ashkenazi, non-Ashkenazi encounters in her examination of co-ethnic recognition failure and rank stratification, Ben-Ur clarifies that these processes are not uniquely Jewish. She instead suggests that these tensions consistently emerge across space and time at the convergence of diasporic populations. Informed by Ben-Ur's theoretical framework, I interpret the influx of Iranian Jewish migrants to the Ashkenazi majority Jewish community of 1980s Los Angeles as a moment of co-ethnic recognition failure. The 1979 Iranian Revolution, the impetus for mass Jewish and non-Jewish Iranian migration alike, in conjunction with the Iran hostage crisis, popularized rampant anti-Iranian sentiments, politics, and media in the United States. Los Angeles' Jewish community was not, of course, impervious to this proliferation of anti-Iranian politics. This only served to exacerbate the invalidation of Iranian Jewish identity by Ashkenazim because of disparate linguistic, religious, and cultural traditions. I argue that the resulting invalidation and subjugation of Iranian Jewish identity permeated queer Jewish politics. Drawing methodological inspiration from the work of Fatima El-Tayyib, I navigate the marginalization of Iranian Jews from Los Angeles' Ashkenazi-dominated queer spaces as a consequence of the false dichotomization of queer Jewish and Iranian identity. In her article, Gays Who Cannot Be Properly Gay, Queer Muslims in the Neoliberal European City, El-Tayyib confronts the manufactured antagonism positioning Europe's implicitly white gay community against the implicitly straight Muslim community. Utilizing Amsterdam as a case study, El-Tayyib clarifies that this Islamophobic discourse constructs implicitly white gays as victims of implicitly straight Muslims, which dangerously inhibits queer Muslim self-articulation and visibility. El-Tayyib evidences this invalidation of queer Muslim identity as a distillation of the broader experience of European queer people of color. However, I transpose her framework to my analysis of queer Jewish spaces in 1980s Los Angeles because of the discursive parallels shaping queer Iranian Jewish marginalization. I therefore attribute the exclusion of queer Iranian Jews from mainstream queer Jewish life to the discursive formation of the implicitly white queer Jewish community as victims of the implicitly straight Iranian Jews. Objections to the authenticity of queer Iranian Jewish identity relegates the population to the dystopian liminal space between the rigid opposing definitions of implicitly white queer Jewishness and implicitly straight Iranian Jewishness. This problematically renders Iranian articulations of queerness as illegible within white Jewish conceptualizations of queerness. Accordingly, queer Iranian Jews were decidedly absent from the development and growth of Beth Chaim Hasidim, the world's first synagogue by and for lesbian Jews. Founded in 1972 in Los Angeles' Pico Robertson neighborhood, the Revolutionary Synagogue became a pillar for the city's queer Jews and a focal point for the community's political activism by the 1980s. Beth Chaim Hasidim, most notably, was the first synagogue to provide resources to Jews with AIDS and to facilitate visits by congregation members to AIDS patients. Despite the trailblazing synagogue's geographical proximity to neighborhoods with concentrated Iranian Jewish populations, the congregation was disproportionately Ashkenazi. I obtained this demographic insight through a series of interviews with a relative who identifies as an Iranian Jewish lesbian and was an active member of Beth Chaim Hasidim congregation during this period. She expressed that although she, in part, found comfort and community with fellow queer Jews, she nonetheless felt isolated as one of the congregation's very few Iranian members. I suggest that the absence, therefore, of Iranian Jews from the Beth Chaim Hasidim congregation and leadership throughout the 1980s discloses the population's marginalization from the city's mainstream queer politics. I do not intend to suggest that Beth Chaim Hasidim deliberately excluded Iranian Jews, nor do I intend to minimize the importance of the synagogue's creation and activism. I instead cite this distinct demographic division within queer Jewish community as a consequence of the discursive disaggregation of Iranian queer Jewish identity produced by co-ethnic recognition failure. Given their absence from mainstream queer Jewish life in Los Angeles, it is difficult to locate archival traces of the queer Iranian Jewish community. Critical archival studies cautions, however, that the archival narratives are, by definition, curated by the government, academy, or other institutional powers. The field imaginatively encourages the historian to engage with the archive as subject instead of the archive as source, to deconstruct systems of power. This framework problematizes the false equivocation of queer Ashkenazi history with queer Jewish history and archives at large. I propose that the narrative influence of white queer Jewish experience must be disentangled from the archives to ensure the future construction of queer Iranian Jewish histories of Los Angeles, which I hope to methodologically prioritize in my future research. Thank you.